That's why it's so important to have friends around you that tell you when your breath stinks. Not in a sense where they think they're better than you or it's a power hierarchy game that you're fucking playing because you're pathological, but it's somebody that wants the best for you that isn't afraid to forego the immediate discomfort of an uncomfortable conversation to tell you where you're fucking up or where you're going wrong or where you could have been better or whatever. Because if you don't, then you're just living in an echo chamber of people that say, no, you know, eat the fried food, eat the candy, don't worry about going to the gym, let's go to Starbucks instead, just sleep in, stay up later, play video games with me all day. You surround yourself with the people that are constantly just reinforcing the shitty beliefs and leaving you to be unconscious about the things that they know you could be better with. Those are not your friends. I don't know what to call them. They're just the people you hang around. Those are not your friends.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode number 78 of the Conscious Cast. I'm your host, Cal, along with my other boy, Mr. Jason Scalora. So yes, guys, we are switching up the seating arrangement today, but how are you doing, my man?
I'm weird. I don't know.
Sam, I'm in a really goofy mood right now.
I am in a goofy mood. I don't know what's been up with me. I think, and I had a conversation with Rachel about this last night, actually.
Yeah.
And because everybody's been telling me that I am giving them like sad vibes or like weird vibes, but like just not the same me. Yeah. Even though usually, like most of the time when people say that, I usually am like, that's weird because I feel fine. And then sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just feel unhappy. And
There's
I don't know.
nothing wrong with feeling.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like feel. I don't know.
So you don't know why?
I don't know why. I mean, and Rachel brought up a good point, which was what I was getting to, and she said that I don't really do anything for like myself really anymore.
What do you mean by that?
It almost sounds like an egoic thing to say, like, yeah, I just don't do anything for me, you know.
I'm just all about others, you know.
Just need to be doing more for me, you know. Self-care, you know. But she was right, because like I don't spend any time just like, you know, just like fucking around with some friends, or just you know, like she had told me, she was like, you know, how often do you and Cal talk about anything besides, you know, business or videography? And I was like, a decent amount, but not nearly the same as we probably should.
We should,
or like, or whatever, or just with anybody, right? So like, I mean, because I kind of like, you know, the way our dynamic works, where it's we don't force really anything ever. Yeah, where if it's a, you know, it's a philosophical conversation, we'll just let it flow. Or if it's a business conversation, we'll just let it flow. And if it turns into us, you know, making fucking stupid jokes, and that's fine too. Like what? Right. Which is, I like that. I think that's what every relationship should be like. I just think the fact that you and I, the culmination of the fact that you and I are going after very similar things, and the fact that we don't really have anybody else to talk about this with, is making it so that, you know, our relationship is much more leaning towards, you know, the videography, the philosophy, this sort of stuff. But I do think this, however, I just had this idea, which was once we sort of progress more in terms of our business with videography and just, you know, with our lives, I think we're going to get to a place where most of our relationship is just going to be bullshitting, hanging out, you know, talking. Like maybe it's going to be a little bit of business, but right now it's probably 75 business, 25, you know, just goofy. But my guess is it'll flip once we have more support, more, you know, employees, things of that nature. I'm on a total fucking tangent right now.
No, you're good.
But I do think that I need to start doing things for myself, which are more so just like the way she worded it was perfect, which is like no means to an end. Just like, you know, just chill, you know, play FIFA or, you know, just do something.
Like so like the best way I can, like last Saturday when we went to go film the basketball game, and like obviously we were working, but like creating, as I like to say.
Yes. It's a good point though.
Yeah. Producing, whatever. I don't know, because work, you know, like, that's a whole nother conversation. But when we were just filming basketball that day, like obviously we were at the game, when we came back and we just were like hanging out, right? Like when we were still doing work and stuff like that, like making the videos for basketball, the time flew by, right? Dude. And it was like, because I didn't, and maybe you can kind of discern something from this, the fact that I didn't have to wake up the next day, or like, like the fact that I didn't have like an obligation such as like going to work the next day, and I knew like a Saturday and a Sunday, right, we could stay up as long as possible, right? I can get this done at my pace, right?
Right.
There really is no kind of like, oh, I got to get to there. I have like, there's no thing I'm hanging over my head that where I'm like, oh God, like stressing out in this moment because like I have to edit this now in order to get to bed by a certain time in order to get my full, 7 to 8 hours before I go to work, right? So it's like kind of how I interpreted that was like you need more time where you're not hanging stuff over your head, right? So whether that be the next day I got to go to work or the next day I got to do this, that, and the fourth. And it's like, it's crazy because when you do that, it's like you feel so much freer, right? Yeah. And you feel so much more autonomous because you are in control more, right? Like you are able to determine when you do things, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are at, right? Myself and yourself included. Literally just last night, right? I was like, I got a meeting at 9 a.m, right? And I was like, I had to get that edit like started, right? And I was like, oh crap. And then I had to like cram all this stuff in. It's just like, it feels just so mentally exhausting, right? It feels like you have no time to just be, right? And you have no time to just do things for yourself, right? No means at all, or no like means to an end, right? You're always thinking about the future. And it's like, to me, that's like a lack of presence, right? 100%. And it's just like, you can't be here, be now with someone that you love, right? And then just let whatever plays out. Obviously, we're still moving towards something, but I think it's just really that lack of presence and that lack of control, right? Or lack of control, right? Because people ultimately make these choices and place these standards and create this this reality themselves, right? And I think that's where the really issue comes in. We create this reality ourselves, right? Of what we need to do, the future obligations that we have to meet, right? And so in this present moment, we hang this standard over our head, right? For probably good reasons, right? But when that becomes your continual practice, when that becomes your regular reality, for a lot of people, bro, like they have no time, like you said, to do things for themselves, to do things where they have nothing hanging over their head, right? And they constantly feel stressed out. They constantly are a prisoner of their own mind, right? It's like no time to just be free, no time to just relax, to surrender, to just say, fuck it, dude. Wherever the night takes us, the night takes us, right? And it's just like, obviously, in our scenario just last Saturday, like, I enjoyed that so much, right? Like, that was such a, I had such a great time. Like,
as you were talking about it earlier, like, as you first brought up the point that, like, when you just brought it up, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, that night is going to be the night that we think about when we look back. Like, we think about, oh my God, like where we started, like we're going to talk about, you had like how shitty our computers are right now and how shitty of a software we're using right now. And the fact that we're staying up till 3 a.m. and don't have anybody to delegate to. And that we worked for literally fucking 9 hours for free. And how I'm sitting on your bed with your little, little tabletop thing. It's just like shit like that. We're gonna be sitting there when we have our professional setup or whatever, however things are. And I think that we're probably gonna get to a point where we're gonna look back and be like, either I'm really glad we were present, or we should have learned to enjoy those moments more. Because right now, and again, this is the process of eating shit, and I don't think it's even a good term for it. The reason why you say eating shit is more so monetarily, where like you're doing things for free, you don't have anywhere to delegate towards. I guess you could. So from a business perspective, you're eating shit for a couple years, but like these are the years, dude.
I mean, dude, we literally could not be in a better spot. You know what I mean?
And I think a big part of it too that we really need to accept, and it's a weird sort of dichotomy and balance of. One of the reasons why this is going to be so like fulfilling for us is the fact that we don't know how things are going to work out. We have so much uncertainty. We have no idea where things are going to take us. Once we have a business, like, and how things are going and know like
develop the system.
Right. The system's in place. We know how things are going to work out to a certain extent. It's not going to be nearly as exciting. And that's just a fact. And so like so although we're not making as much money now and don't have a family and things under our feet, these are going to be the times that are the most energizing and fulfilling, and we need to like make sure, like, especially for me, like I'm adding myself. Like I really need to make sure I'm like enjoying it and being there when I'm there.
And I think like even like I couldn't agree with you more, man. And I think like taking a more general approach there, it's just like when like if you're in college or if you're at a job or if you're family members, right, where you just constantly feel suffocated by just obligations after obligations. Realize that it's your choice, right? At the end of the day, what perspective you take, right? And it's like, obviously, we all have things we have to do. We all have standards we have to meet, no doubt about it, right? In order for us to have a preferable life, in order for us to do things on a regular basis, function in this operating society and not be in prison, like we have to do things. Yeah. But I think it's so important for people to recognize that you can, if you're just clogged at your desk, right? And you're like, oh my God, I have this shit, I have to do this shit, I have to do this shit, I have to do. You can take 10 breaths right there.
Literally.
Do something for you now by taking 10 breaths. I do this all the time at my desk, right? Yeah. I'm like, oh fuck, man, I gotta do this, got videography, this. And it's just like, wait a minute. I can just sit here.
Right.
And reality is neutral.
Right.
Because I'm the one that projects meaning onto reality. I'm the one that creates these beliefs. I'm the one that creates these values, right? And I create my perception, right? And it's like how you shape your perception will will lead to feelings, will lead to different emotions, right? And it's just like, if you could just realize that, like, we've talked about this on like the Paradox Perfection episode, right? Or Perfection Paradox episode, whatever. It's just like, you could take that kind of back seat, right? And it's just like, whether it be, you're venturing into something such as like sports videography, right? And you can just take a step back and just be like, wow, like I can release these chains from me right now, right? And it's just like release all these standards. It's not to say that they're going to go away, right?
Right.
But you're just making that realization that you don't have to continually stay in this stressful state, right? And you don't have to have it keep on going every single second and have the same choice.
100%. It's like when you're working and you're working unconsciously, you're not going to be at peace, right? And this happened to me all the time when I was working as a busboy at Carbone's. I'd be bussing tables, and, I'm trying to simultaneously think about, okay, I have 3 more tables here. I need to help Steven and Holly, and I need to help grab their plates off their tables, so I need to do that first. And I'm thinking about that as I'm grabbing the forks, but there's not enough forks, so I need to go to the back, and I need to clean off those, but I need to make sure I only clean off those for 5 minutes so that I can get Holly's table and then get Steven's table. But then should I wipe out that table first because there's a reservation, and like there's all these things that are like going into it. And it's like, is it an easy job? Yeah, but it's hard, but it's easy, like, anyone can do it. It just requires a lot of discipline. But the point is just because there's so many things going on doesn't mean I have to be out of peace.
Yeah, totally.
Because, and I realized this when I was literally running back, and I needed to run because like there was no other choice. Like time wise, I had to run. But just because I was running didn't mean my mind needed to be running. It's like, when I'm running to get the forks, I could just be like, fuck it. Like, I got to get more forks. Like, whatever. While I'm getting the forks, I'm getting the forks.
Yeah.
I'm not focused on, oh, God, Steven's going to be pissed. He's going to yell at me. Who fucking cares if Steven yells at you? You know what I mean? Like, all these things and all these projections that we put into our mind while we should just be doing whatever it is that we're doing is what's taking us away from the peace of the moment, right? Like, if you're telling me about something that's going on with sports videography, and while you're telling me about it, I'm like, oh, that could lead to this problem, and, oh, I need to do this, or I need to make sure that, I'm really honing in on making sales or whatever the fuck I'm thinking about, then A, I'm not listening to, but B, I'm taking myself out of peace. There's no reason for it. Because, a problem, if it arises, is only a problem if I put it as a label as a problem.
Yeah.
It could be a challenge. It sounds so corny, but it literally just could be a challenge. Yeah. Your perspective is a choice. What happens isn't, obviously. But I just think that if people were to really understand, and understand's even a shitty word for it. It's not even the right word for it. It's almost like if people were to just fucking make an effort to be present in everything they do and stop analyzing and stop looking at, small minor things as small minor things and look at them as moments where they could choose to be more present, then they would really understand the fact that anywhere you are, no matter what's going on in your life, you can be at peace. You can be. Although things are painful, you could still be at peace.
Totally.
And so I think that, it all comes down to meditation.
Yeah, dude. I had just had this thought and it ran out of my head, but anyways, it's like when we have all these complications, right? It's just like, well, complications, right? And like problems that we create, we're just piling all this stuff onto ourselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, right? Like peace is the highest good, right? And it's like, you determine that. This is what I want to talk about. You determine what the highest good is, right? And it's just like a lot of times how we're naturally wired, we think what our self-worth should come from is being productive, right? Especially within the Western side of the world, right? Like this individual society, like how productive am I being? If I'm not doing much, I'm not worth very much, right? I'm a low-value person, right? It's like, cool. Like if you can do a ton of things, I have a lot of respect for that, right? But if you're doing a lot of things and you're lacking presence, internally, most likely, you're not in a good state, right? And I think too, like don't be comparing yourself to yourself, right? Or sorry, don't do that. No,
that's the worst idea ever.
No, don't be comparing yourself to others, right? Obviously, that's like one of the golden rules. But because I've recently been coming along and really trying to change, and this is something that I'm kind of queried, I guess you could say, and I think you could help me answer it, is like, how do you change that priority? How do you change what your self-worth is based on, right? So if I want my self-worth to be based on being present, right, as opposed to productivity, right? Not saying you shouldn't be productive, right? But like if you're like, I feel shitty because I'm not doing very much. No, I want to change this because I feel inadequate because I haven't been as present as I should be. And I'm not saying you should feel inadequate, right? But just kind of make that kind of recognition that you should be a little bit more present.
I mean, it's almost like it's not really a conversation about presence. It's deeper than that. It's almost where, at least for me, the process is a matter of dropping the idea that everyone's experience of life is the same as mine. Because the way that I'm going to feel fulfilled is completely different than everybody else. Yeah. Like this game is not a game of presence. This game is not a game of productivity. This is a game of, do you have anything to complain about? That's the game. Do you genuinely have any complaints about your life? And if you don't, then you've won. Nobody can give anybody any advice if you have nothing to complain about. Even if that means that you're making $12,000 a year and you live in poverty.
But wouldn't that be on the basis of like you're happy, right? Like yeah,
exactly. If you have nothing to complain about, you've won. Like that, I mean, it's really that simple, right? And if you're going throughout life and you're not as present as a Buddhist monk would be in a monastery, who's winning? If they both have nothing to complain about, everybody's winning. Nobody's losing there, right? It's almost like, and because this thought really came to my mind when I heard Gary Vee talking about the fact that he never meditates, and then he went on later in the conversation to say that he loves living in New York City or needs noise to go to bed because he just needs that constant like stimulation, but not even stimulation, but like he needs that constant like noise, I guess. But he needs the chaos is what the way he puts it. He's like, I need the chaos, and I'm like, no, that's not right. This is why I'm studying meditation, becoming an instructor. And I'm like, no, that's not right. You're probably avoiding something. You're probably in a state where, you just don't know what it's like to be at peace. So you have nothing better to compare to. And I'm like going down this rabbit hole of why he's probably wrong and doesn't understand what he's talking about. I'm sitting there and I'm judging Gary Vee. And then I listened to a podcast with Jay Shetty. And this is one of the reasons why I fucking love his content is because he was like, who are you to say that somebody else's version of life is better or worse than yours? And that's when it brought me back to the perspective, which is a Gary Vee perspective of like, if you have no complaints, who cares, right? If you're on 13 softball teams and make, under 30 grand a year as a parent of 4, like, what does it matter? If you have nothing to complain about, you're winning. You're winning more than anybody else.
I think what should be an asterisk there is, I completely agree, right? But that doesn't mean you should not be willing to change your lifestyle, right?
Of course.
Or be willing to be open-minded to different ways of life, right? Because I don't think that's what you were saying.
No,
but I think a lot of people, based on that statement, could easily interpret like, oh, how my version of life is how it's always going to be, right? And it's like you said, if you have nothing to complain about, cool. Like whatever you're doing, right? Because like a lot of people, from my instance, right, I'm telling people like I'm not going to grad school anymore, right? Like I'm really trying to push for sports videography, right? And the other job that I have. And they're like, oh, you can keep going to school part time, right? I'm just like, but like that like you keep doing it, like, but like objectively speaking, it doesn't serve me at all.
Stay a rat in the rat race.
Exactly, right? And it's like, for me, like nothing against school, right? But for me personally, I'm not saying I won't go back to school. It just doesn't work out. I'm going to be spending all this time on a degree that's never going to serve me in the end, right? And it's like, that's just how it is, right? And it's just, that's my own personal case, right? And I have no complaints, right? But a lot of people like to dip their toes in, and they don't understand that people have different ways of life, right? Different goals, different objectives, right? And there's not one concrete path. That's what we said in a couple episodes ago. Everyone has their own blueprint. And that one time when we were in the car, right, it's like what's good for me might be bad for you, right? So if what I need is to go out into the forest for like 45 minutes to an hour, right? That's what I need, right? That might not have the same effect on you, but does that mean you should never go out into nature, right?
Exactly.
No, right? Exactly. It's like we have different things, right? So for me, I don't really like journaling that much, right? It doesn't really do much for me. Like, it just doesn't really work out. But for someone like you,
for me, it's
awesome. It's awesome,
crazy,
right?
Yeah.
For me, like, I don't know about, I mean, you meditate, but like, for me, like, you know, just mindful meditation, that's what it is for me, right? It's just like, you respect how different people's points of view are, different ways of life, right? You obviously ask questions about that, maybe try and integrate it into your life, right? After, you know, some trials and tribulations, you figure out like, okay, this just isn't for me. You know what I mean? It's like the world's not ending if I don't know how to journal. You know what I mean? So it's like that. You know?
Yeah, but if you get to the point where you do have something to complain about, aka you get to the point where you are in pain, you are suffering, there is some way, shape, or form where you are inadequate, and it's a case of you can fix it and should fix it, and it's not a case of grass is greener. I'm just comparing myself to a rock star that is unattainable. But if that is the case, then you need to figure out who has the kind of life in that area that you want and figure out what they do and try it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and this is going back to your asterisk, which is an extremely important point, which is like, you know, you can be not complaining about anything and still be 300 pounds overweight. I don't believe... I mean, granted, I don't know how how certain people are raised. I don't know how certain people feel about it. But chances are you do not want to be massively overweight. Yeah. That's the truth. Yeah. And so if you're not complaining and you're still happy, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and lose the weight. Because I also just don't believe that you can look at anybody in the eyes or look at yourself in the mirror and honestly say, I'm okay with being massively overweight. I just don't think that that's a thing, right? And I also don't think that it's reasonable for somebody to suggest that, well, overweight is just a standard that was set by somebody that only looks at Victoria's Secret models. I don't think that's true either. Do I think that you should strive to attain things that are photoshopped and that are unrealistic? Not at all. But if you know you're in a position where you are not putting forth the effort that you could be putting forth, not something that's going to kill you, but putting forth effort in any area, physical or not, then you are not going to feel happy and fulfilled with who you are. I just think that there are certain things that apply to human beings as a whole that you just can't walk around or psychologically and pathologically think yourself into a box of, well, I don't care. I'm happy being overweight. Or I don't care. I'm happy not, you know, having a good relationship with my kids. Or, you know, I don't care. Fill in the blank. I'm fine the way I am. And a lot of times it's a pathological trap that you put yourself into by surrounding yourself with an echo chamber of social media and friends that only tell you what you want to hear, but also being in a position where you've lied to yourself so many times that you don't even know what reality is anymore. All you know is you feel like shit 24/7. So I think people can bring themselves to that point, and that is the idea that I got, at least from your asterisk, which is, you know, be open-minded and still choose to get better when there's things to make better.
Because a couple things there. Like, it all comes back down to what you want, right? It all comes back down to, like, what is your goal at the end of the day, too, right? And it's like, if you want to be overweight, right, most likely, you don't, but, you know, I'm sure there's someone out there that does, right? If that's what your goal and you have no complaints, I got nothing to say to you.
Right.
But also, too, I think it's, what did I want to say? I forgot, but it'll come back to me. Yeah, it's just like it all comes back down to what you want. Like, what is your end goal at the end of the day, too? And it's like when you can respect that, right, and you can kind of understand that there is no universal kind of way of life that everyone has, right? Like, for instance, like you pointed out, like you want to live a better life. Right. Okay, what is your definition of better, right? Like, what is your definition of good, right? Because like people have different definitions of good, right? It's like, obviously, you know, we have a consensus, you know, for what that is. You know, like you have your basic needs met. You know, you have shelter. You know, of all these different types of things, good job, family, whatever. You know, like you name it. But for someone, you know, they don't necessarily want those things, right? They have different. Obviously, we all have the same kind of basic needs, you know, but like beyond that, they have different goals than us. It's like, in addition, when you can realize that these goals are man-made at the end of the day, right? These standards are man-made, right? Like even the standard to lose weight, right? Like that's a standard set by us, right? And it's just like, if you want to be overweight, right? And you just feel like so, oh, this is what I wanted to talk about. Okay. I'm just going to talk about this now just because. Yeah, like, you know, these standards are man-made, you know, and kind of like the essential point there is like when you feel so suffocated by these standards, right, you can realize that they're just man-made, right? Beyond humans' attention, beyond our consciousness, right, awareness, whatever you want to say, they don't exist, right? So you, on that basis, have the ability to change those, right, and to come up with your own philosophy and way of life, right? But I think also, too, when you're discussing things such like, say you're overweight, right? And like you said before, you touched on the echo chamber, right? You're telling all these, like, these people are just telling you what you want to hear, right? There's no one in your circle saying you should lose weight, right? No one, right? So you begin to think, let's just say you feel shitty, right? Like you feel shitty objectively, right? But you don't recognize that you feel shitty. You just think this is how it is, right? Oh my God, bro, I keep forgetting it, man. What is the point?
Take your time.
So like you feel shitty, right? But you don't recognize. Okay, yeah. Ah, man. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of go with the flow, see what happens. So yeah, you objectively feel shitty, but that becomes normalized within your life, right? So it appears as nothing to you, right? Like that just becomes how you operate, right? And it's very interesting too, because like when you, and this is kind of like a question that I want to open up to you, is like when you're in that kind of state where you're just in this echo chamber, right? And you have no other goals being thrown your way from like an outside perspective, right? So like, for instance, you should lose weight, right? I just find it fascinating because people will develop that kind of mindset that this is the way things are, right? And they won't deviate at all, right? They'll just presume that this is the way things are. Like, I have to be overweight, right? Because my family says this is how life is, for instance, right? But like to us, like that makes no sense, right? And it's just like, I worry that a lot of people are in that state. Maybe not with obesity, right? Maybe, I'm sure, definitely, probably.
I have 100 examples coming to
my
mind.
Yeah, for sure. But actually, I think just people develop this closed mindset, right? And they're never willing to change, right? And life is ever changing, right? Nothing is set in stone, right? Like things are constantly fluctuating, good, bad, seasons and cycles, right? And it's just like when you can realize that there's a difference between how you interpret reality and how reality actually is, I think that could be the beacon that can open your mind to a lot of things, right? So for me, for instance, like with a lot of things, right? And it's very important for us to even question ourselves. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times we think we have the answers, right? But we really don't.
Yeah, I mean, because immediately what it makes me think about was, I don't want to drop names, Emily. No, she wouldn't even care. But Emily and I were talking about, because actually we're doing this 2-week challenge. Did I tell you about it? Yeah. So we're doing a 2-week challenge because she told me, you know, she's like, oh, I got bags under my eyes. And big shout out to Emily because she is one of the most open-minded people I've ever talked to. Like honestly.
That's awesome.
She's very open.
Very cool.
She has a lot of flaws, as all of us do, but she's so willing to admit them. Like, there's no resistance to be like, yep, you know, I totally could. Like, and she had told me this, too, so here's how the conversation came up, for those of you who don't know. So Emily and I were talking about, she has bags under her eyes, and to be honest, I don't even notice them, but she was like, oh, I have really bad bags under my eyes, and I want to, like, but, you know, I'll never be able to get rid of them. And I'm like, why? And this was a thought in my mind because, and she'll be willing to admit this to you, which is she doesn't eat incredibly healthy. The main thing is her sleep, and she doesn't sleep well enough, right? And I don't either. My circadian rhythm is fucked, to be quite honest with you. But she'll sleep like 2 hours a night and then work 9 hours. So like it's and that's like
that's bad.
That's normal for Emily. That's normal. She does that shit all the time. And so I was like, listen, I was like, if for 2 weeks straight you followed a regimen that I or anybody that like is in this field made for you, which is I'll make a sleep schedule for you, I'll create a nutritional restriction for you, and an exercise program for you. And if you did it for 2 weeks, I guarantee you'd see a significantly noticeable difference in the bags under your eyes. Mostly because of the sleep. But I was like, fuck it, let's make but I bet you could do that too. And she was like, let's do it. I was like, okay.
Dope.
I was like, fucking bet. And so then we made a little plan, and she's doing it, and it's actually kind of dope. Like, she's kicking ass. And but what she had said to me when we were having this conversation about, oh, it's genetics, I'm like, listen, like, it might be.
Yeah.
I don't know your parents. It may be.
Yeah.
But also, have you lived this lifestyle for even 2 weeks that we have as a made-out plan? No. Okay. Let's try being healthy and seeing if it has an effect on the way your body looks. Like, let's see. Like, I'm interested to see. But then she had brought up a fact too. She was like, yeah, but I thought just some stuff was like that. She's like, but like, I also heard like Lizzo eats really healthy and works out. And I'm like, I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that with pretty much damn certainty that is an echo chamber that you're living in when it comes to Lizzo eats very healthy and exercises on a regular basis. And if that causes mayhem, I don't believe you're the type of person that knows anything about nutrition, exercise, and proper health.
The minute you hear "I heard," says everything.
Well, let me see what she looks like. There's a certain extent that genetics play a role, and a lot of times it's significant. But if you are massively obese, you cannot
if you're more of like an ectomorph where you easily put on fat, right? That's not to say you can never put on fat, right? Like,
because it's harder.
Yeah, no, if you're like, I'm obese, right? And I'm going to be obese the rest of my life. You're acting as a victim of your own circumstance, right? You're like, that's like denying all choice in your life, right? Like, is there a choice between low-calorie popcorn and Doritos?
You're going to tell me this is genetics. That's all that is. You can't say that.
Dude, it's genetics, okay? Give her a break.
You can't you can't look me in the eyes and honestly say this is wholly because of her genetics, and this woman is healthy, eats healthy, and exercises on a regular basis.
She's whole and complete.
What's her heart rate? What's her BMI? Like, and I don't say that to bash her. I don't care.
No,
And if she has no complaints, then fuck it. Yeah. But the problem is people are using that as a crutch to not work out. Because any of the people that say, well, Lizzo, are people that don't exercise and don't eat healthy. You don't hear anybody say, well, Lizzo, who actually is like, well, yeah, no, actually, I exercise really regularly. I exercise correctly, and I actually eat correctly. Yeah. It just doesn't, fucking happen. Because those are the people that don't make excuses and are actually getting after it. Which, and I don't say that to, victim blame or fat shame or whatever people are going to shove down my throats when they hear this. I say that because I want you to take control of your fucking shit. Yeah. I want you to put yourself in the driver's seat and stop living in a place where you're completely living life where nothing is in your hands and you have no responsibility because everything's out of your hands and it's only a twinkle of God's fingers that say you're going to be fat forever. You don't have to be that way.
Take responsibility to have no responsibility. So you take control of your life, right? You start working out, you start eating healthy, and you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So you develop the habits and behaviors, now accountability, right? And those things will just come over time. It'll come natural. Right. You won't even have to worry about it, right? It'll become second nature to you.
Literally.
And it no longer is a responsibility, right? It is, but it isn't at the same time, too. It doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like an obligation, right? Yeah. But, like, even though you still are responsible for your health, you still are, technically that phrase is ass backwards. But, like, if you really look into it, but to me, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
You take responsibility.
I get what you're saying.
To have no responsibility. Because, like, to me, in that instance, it's like, we were talking about earlier before, how, we have this burden over our heads, right? And it's just like, we constantly feel like we're not having enough time for ourselves, right? And it's just like we feel so locked in, right? We don't feel free, right? When you start similar parallels there, I'm not saying it's the exact scenario, right? similar parallels there. So say you're overweight, right? And it's just like fuck, man. Like I'm just you're a victim of your own circumstance, right? You're just like, God damn it. Like I'm just gonna be fat my entire life, right? Like there's nothing I can do about it. If you can recognize, similar to how we were talking about before, that it's a choice, right? Based on the habits, the behaviors, the decisions that you make on a regular basis, right? And that you can free yourself by taking control, right? You'll experience such great effects because you're no longer just seeing reality as the way it is, right? Like, this is the way things are. This is the way things are always going to be, right? And as we touched on before, life is always changing, right? If you think you're in the most shitty circumstance right now, right? You've hit rock bottom. Yeah. The only way is up, my friend, right? And like it might not be the easiest climb out of that hole, right? If you even consider it to be a hole, right? And you want to get out of that hole, right? It may not be the easiest climb, right? But each moment is a different opportunity to change your life, right? Just by you having that thought, having that mindset, having that kind of idea in your head that you can start to put yourself on a different trajectory to another goal, 100%. Right? And it's like so many people just are so asleep to this, right? Because like yesterday I was like, God, I don't know what specific example I was thinking about. I was like, oh yeah, it was like something to do with like meal plans or something like that. It was just like, I was like, I don't care, just give me whatever meal plan. And I was like, just it's so much easier, right? Because I don't really care about it, right? I don't want to look into it. Like I was just thinking like from a hypothetical perspective, I'm like, I don't have a meal plan right now, but like I realized like when you do that, right? When you're just like, fuck it, whatever, like I don't really care. Let me not look into the details of this. Not let me educate myself on what I should do.
Right.
The people that are going to choose that plan for you are in full control, right? And they can do whatever they want. And that's exactly what they want to do because they'll have full control, right? And so you're asleep in that instance, right? And we're not going to get into this right now, but a lot of people with the government, the corruption, like that is a huge thing right now with the media, huge thing, right? But applying that to the conversation we're in right now, so many people are asleep, right? And they're not making these active choices such as educating themselves. Right. What is the truth, right? They're not looking at different sources, synthesizing information. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I definitely got to get better at it for sure. I just gave you an example of how I'm asleep in many ways, right? And there's work that I need to do. Absolutely, right? But if you can realize, start looking at these different sources, find out to the best of your abilities what is true, what is not, right? Sift through the bullshit and, find out what you actually want, right? Find out what is going to bring you closest to the thing that you most desire, right? And it's like you said before, if you have a lifestyle that you want to develop, start to look towards people that already have that lifestyle, right? And start asking questions, right? Research, that's literally what it is, asking questions, research, right? And so as you start to dive more into that kind of research area, right, such as, nutrition, weightlifting, driving a car, like, I don't know, just anything, bro, going for a job, like a lifestyle, you'll start to be able to pick up on different patterns just like you're developing any type of habit, and you'll just realize that you're not a victim of your circumstance and that you can create active change in your life.
Right. Well, you don't, the point is that you are a victim, but you don't know to the extent that you are.
Yeah.
And if you're playing this stupid game that most of our fucking society's playing nowadays, you're going to assume that there's far more things out of your control than there actually are. Yeah. Are there things out of your control? Yes. Yes. Everybody gets sick and everybody dies. Yeah. Obviously, there are a lot of fucking things out of your control.
Yeah.
100%. This is a game where ultimately nobody gets out alive. Just the way it is. So, of course, there are things you cannot control. Agreed. But just because there are a lot of things and a ton of things that you can't control doesn't mean you should subscribe to the idea that you're completely out of control no matter what you do. You're completely out of control because your mom and dad are fat. You're completely out of control because, your mom was a drinker, so now you're a drinker. You don't have to go down those routes just because your genetics make it harder, just because your environment makes it harder, just because your race or your ethnicity or your gender or your sexuality or whatever makes it more difficult for you. So be it. Yes, easy for a cisgender straight white male to say, for sure. But if they're the rule, and this is the rule I always preach into the ground, which is if there are anybody with a similar or worse circumstance than you who have had those circumstances, gotten past those circumstances, and now live a life that is better or exceeds or is similar to the one that you want to live now, then you have no excuse. You have no excuse. You can't blame it on anything anymore. But the truth is there's always a case like that. There's always a case where there was 2 drunk parents. There's always a case where it was a single black mother in an impoverished neighborhood. There's always these cases. Sometimes there are times where there's nothing you could do. You just die at a young age, and game over for you. And it's horrible. But if that's not you, which it isn't, because you're listening to the podcast, then you can do something about it. You can actually do something about it. And I don't say that to, again, victim blame or fat shame or claim that it's as easy for you than it is for me or for somebody else who has it better off than me or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there are things that you can control that you're not choosing to control because you're subscribed to the idea that you're a victim in every single situation 100% and that there's nothing you could do about it. And that's not the truth.
And I think, too, when you face that truth, right, of just like, this is how I'm currently operating. And then you have that perspective come in that's like, let's just say an opposing perspective, and it just checks a presumption that you've already had, and you're like, oh, fuck. How I've been operating may not be correct, right? It's like a lot of people, when they feel that truth, right, it'll just come, because this happens to me all the time, right? It's just like, for instance, I wanted to do programming in my building. I wanted to get pizza. I wanted to get all these different types of things. And then I was like, Cal, if you buy pizza, you're supporting animal cruelty. But I was like, oh, dude, the community. I was like, I checked myself, and I was like, according to my own ethics, my own morals, I can't do that, bro. Like, how that turns out, that's how that turns out. But that's just a scenario of, like, representing what I'm talking about. When you have that kind of perspective, that challenges your already formed beliefs, right? And for instance, like an outside system of beliefs that checks your already, or someone's outside perspective that checks your beliefs, right? We don't like change, right? We want things to stay as they are, right? Because change is uncomfortable. Change is not easy to deal with by any means, right? Because it requires you to learn new things, right? It's not on autopilot, right? And where you can easily take, easily know and understand where everything is, right? But if you're never changing, right, you're never growing, right? And it's like so many times in my life, and more so recently, I've been facing these perspectives, and it's so easy to close the door on them. It's so easy to be like, nah, I'm just going to keep everything how it is, especially if society is on a track where they're not upholding this, I guess you could say, perspective and pushing it on you even more, right? Because it is on you. It's on you to uphold this stuff, right? And it's, if you can do it as an individual, imagine what you could do as a group, right? And I find, and I respect people that are willing to be open-minded about this type of stuff and are willing to face these perspectives and, more importantly, integrate it within their own lives.
Right. That's why it's so important to have friends around you that tell you when your breath stinks. It's the truth.
Your breath never stinks, baby.
Thanks, handsome. But that's why it's so important to have people around you that are going to tell you when you're fucking up, or when they notice something that they think is a flaw or whatever. Not in a sense where they think they're better than you, or it's a power hierarchy game that you're fucking playing because you're pathological. But it's somebody that wants the best for you, that isn't afraid to forego the immediate discomfort of an uncomfortable conversation to tell you where you're fucking up or where you're going wrong or where you could have been better or whatever. Yeah. Because if you don't, then you're just living in an echo chamber of people that say, no, eat the fried food, eat the candy, don't worry about going to the gym, let's go to Starbucks instead, just sleep in, stay up later, play video games with me all day. Have you seen this video on Pornhub or whatever? Like, you surround yourself with the people that are constantly just reinforcing the shitty beliefs and leaving you to be unconscious about the things that they know you could be better with. those are not your friends. I don't know what to call them. They're just the people you hang around. Those are not your friends.
Yeah, man. It's like so many people are in that spot too, right? And it's like, it really comes back down to you. You know what I mean? And like, unless you have a friend that, for instance, like forces you to go to the gym. I don't want to say forces, but heavily influences you to go to the gym, right? Most people don't have that type of friend, right? And so it's on them to change these habits. 100%. But like I said before, 100%. No one likes change, right? And it's so hard for people to face that truth and let alone make that change in their life, right? Like 100%. they know they should change, but are they going to? No, because it's hard, right? Like it's going to take time, right? And for them to sacrifice that short-term comfort for that long-term payoff is not worth it to them.
100%. Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. We're like, if you have a friend and they're super overweight and you sit there and you don't tell them even for once, like, hey, maybe you should start exercising. Maybe it might be a good idea for you to start eating healthier, yada, yada, yada. Like, if you're not the friend that's going to tell your other friend, like, hey, I know that you're in a bad place, you know, but you're really overweight. And, like, I've noticed you've put on some pounds. Like, I think maybe we should try, you know, getting in better shape. Is there a gym membership that you can get? Would you want to do cardio? Like, or trying to be proactive and trying to help you get better. They're not your friend because 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you're going to look back and say, I should have fucking got in shape.
Yeah.
And your friend could have been the person to have that uncomfortable conversation and tell you, hey, you're looking a little bit fatter. Like, I hate to say it, I don't want to be the person to make you feel bad and go to bed crying tonight because you are fatter. But you need to hear it because this is what you need to hear. If that person's not going to tell you that, that's straight up selfish. And they're not your friend. Yeah. Because friends have the best interest in mind for you. Yeah. For the best version of you. Mm-hmm. Not for the version of you that wants to fucking sit there and stuff your face with cake because it's more immediately gratifying. You're going to look back when you're, you know, 300 pounds and you're not there at your daughter's graduation because you didn't have yourself in check, so you had to be at the hospital, you know, getting your insulin or whatever. You could have known. Is it on you? Yes. But as a friend, you are obligated to have the uncomfortable conversations with people so that they know that A, it's noticed, but B, that you love them. Like, if I'm fucking up and you don't say anything to me and you just, like, if I go down the street and I just start insulting people and you just sit there and accept it even though you know it's wrong and don't say, hey, Jay, what the fuck was that about? You're not my friend.
Yeah.
Because you're being selfish by saying, I, Cal, don't want to have this uncomfortable conversation. So I'm going to let it go and I'm not going to say anything and let him continue going down the shitty path. Yeah. It's just selfish.
Yeah. I think, too, like, I couldn't agree more, man. Like, if you're just having that short-term comfort for that long-term, and you're not, if you're just selfishly having that short-term satisfaction and in the long term you're not helping your friend when you know you should be, right? That's on you, right? And it's selfish, like you said. But I think, too, for people that are in that position that, like, say, for instance, like, you're telling me about a flaw that I have, right? And you're, like, saying, like, Cal, you need to fix this, but I'm not listening.
Right.
Don't beat a dead horse, man, right? Like, there's only so much you can do, right? You are a signpost, right? And listen, you gotta, if you love this person, right? Like, I have people in my life, you have people in your life that you, at least according to us, we know what they should do, right? Or what we believe they should do that would drastically improve their life, right? But if time and time and time again, you know, like, you're trying to help them out, you're making changes in your life, you know, to help that kind of habit or experience occur, right? And they're not, you know, starting to pick up that natural desire, that natural interest where they'll do it on their own. You got to take a step back, man, right? Because you're going to drive yourself into a fucking hole, right? Like, it's not going to be fun. Yeah. And whether you're friends with that person, you could still be friends with that person, right? And still tell them how it is, right? Like, in a nice, objective, concrete way that doesn't make things personal, right? But understand there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, whatever label you want to put to it doesn't really make a difference. Yeah. But the way I kind of look at it is, hey, if we're friends, then you can pretty much be doing whatever. I'm not going to be friends with fucking Hitler. But, like, you don't need to work out excessively. You don't need to take care of your body. You don't need to even be in great mental health. Like, I'm good. Like, we can be friends for sure.
Be nice.
But if you want to be one of my good friends, you want to be one of my best friends, you want to be one of the people that I call regularly and talk to on a regular basis, I will not be good friends with you if you're not the person who I can tell, hey, you're looking kind of overweight. You should probably start eating a little healthier. It's not that I want to be, you know, in some fucking power dynamic where you do what I say. But if you can't take that and you can't accept criticism and you won't actually make your life better when you know you should, you're not going to be one of my good friends. I'm not saying that as a signpost to how great I am, because there's no reason for it. But the reason why I am saying is because you should be like that too. If you are only friends with people that you can only tell what they want to hear in the moment to, who are you friends with? You're not friends with somebody that you can tell, hey man, I love you, but you really got to start hitting the gym, man. Things are not going to be great for you in a couple years. You think that that's your friend? I don't know who they are, but they're not your friend.
Yeah, and it's like, you could say it like how Jason just said it, but you can also say it in a way like, oh, hey man, have you been going to the gym recently? Like, how's that going? You know, just like kind of like,
exactly.
It all depends on how you phrase it, right? And yeah, dude, it's like, surround yourself with people that you want to be. You know what I mean? Like, I was telling Delia this last week. You know what I mean? It's just like, recently I've been just attracting, or no, Delia said this perfectly. She was like, the reason why I think we're attracted to each other, right, is because I see part of myself in you, right? And it's just like, you don't attract what you want. You attract who you are, right? And it's like, that is so factual, right? Like, of course, you interact with so many different people, right? You interact with a wide array of people, right? But who, like you said, who your closest friends are, who keep it real with you the most, and who have your best interest at hand, who understand you best, right? Are those people that have similar habits and behaviors to you, right? And it's because they understand what is important, right? And vice versa, they understand what is important for you, right? And so when they see that you have similar standards, right, and they see that you're not meeting those standards in a way, if you're in a kind of dynamic where you are a real friend, right, they'll point that out to you, right, and they'll put you back on track to start making progress, or help you put you back on track by mentioning to you a flaw, by mentioning to you like a mistake that you made, calling you out in an I don't like that word, but like, you know, in an objective, calm manner, right? And they will help you because they care about you, right? And that you have similar goals, similar standards, and you're very much alike at the same time.
100%. If you love somebody, you tell them what they need to hear, or not what they want to hear. It's really that simple.
I think that's a great place to wrap up this episode.
Bad boy up.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that has been episode number 78 of the Conscious Cast. I'm your host, Cal, along with my other boy, Mr. Jason Scalora. Where can they find you, my man?
At Jason Scalora, JASONSCALORA. You know what I just realized too?
What? We
are consistent, bro. Look back, clip this shit now. We're getting fucking 20 views, whatever. Dude, dude, motherfuckers. They don't understand, dude.
We're so much better than everyone else.
Bro, like, take me out of it. I don't care. Look at your story. We'll see where you are in 10 years. He's so lucky. He's a cisgender white male. He showed up every fucking day. Episode 78.
Episode number 78, guys. Make sure you love yourself because I love you.
Stay handsome.
And we are clocking out, people. Peace.